Tuesday, June 27, 1944, 3 weeks after D-Day, and the beaches were secure. But the Allies were bogged down. Supplies were running thin. Tanks, bullets, food, and reinforcements couldn't reach the front fast enough. To break out, they needed Cherbourg, the only deep-water port in Normandy. Without it, the invasion would collapse. And Hitler knew it. He ordered Cherbourg turned into a death trap, mined, wired, and packed with thousands of die-hard troops with one order: hold it to the last man. The US Army was bleeding for every block. Progress was brutal. That is, until a ragtag band of misfits slipped behind enemy lines. They blew through bunkers, wiped out machine gun nests, and left 400 stunned Germans with no choice but to surrender on the spot. And when they learned 52 US paratroopers from the 101st Airborne were rotting in a Nazi dungeon, their quiet commander did something insane. He marched straight to the gates and told the Germans they were surrounded by 800 commandos, foaming at the mouth for revenge. But seriously, no joke. He had just 15 guys left, and the Germans bought it like it was on sale. He and his men strolled past the US Army and out of Cherbourg with 750 German POWs, 52 freed Screaming Eagles, and the crown jewel of Normandy in hand, the Port of Cherbourg. But who was this guy? He was Quentin Walsh. Quentin R. Walsh's path to one of World War II's wildest battlefield bluffs didn't begin on a beach in Normandy. It started chasing rum runners. Born in Providence, Rhode Island in 1910, Walsh graduated from the U.S. Coast Guard Academy in 1933. He spent his early career hunting smugglers along the East Coast, sailing cutters from Cuba to Nova Scotia, and enforcing whaling treaties. He even spent a year aboard a whaling ship in Antarctic waters, a post that hardened his seamanship and sharpened his problem-solving. When World War II broke out, he was tapped for Atlantic convoy duty. But by 1943, the US military needed out-of-the-box thinkers for the D-Day invasion. They sent Walsh to London to help plan how the Allies would hold the beachheads after landing. Everyone knew victory wasn't just about storming ashore, it was about sustaining momentum. The Army Corps of Engineers had a temporary fix: mulberry harbors, floating piers to offload cargo at the beaches. But they wouldn't last. The Allies needed a real deep-water port. That made Cherbourg, at the tip of the Cottontown Peninsula, the first major objective after the landing. Walsh's mission? Get that harbor operational as soon as the Army took it, before the Germans could destroy it. Walsh didn't wait around for an ideal force. He pitched a bold plan: create a naval reconnaissance and demolition unit that could land with the Army, push into the chaos, and secure the port before the Germans blew it sky high. He helped draw up the plan himself, and then volunteered to lead it. The team was small, just 53 men, mostly Seabees from the Navy's construction battalions. They weren't traditional infantry. They were welders, builders, and divers, combat-trained engineers. But under Walsh's command, they became something more: a high-speed commando unit. Operators who could seize a fortified port under fire and have it operational before the smoke cleared. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, they stood by as weather delayed their mission. 3 days later, they came ashore on Utah Beach and linked up with the U.S. Army's 79th Infantry Division, heading north toward Cherbourg. For over 2 weeks, the Germans fought tooth and nail. Fortified bunkers, artillery crews, and die-hard naval units turned the city into a fortress. By June 22nd, the city was cut off, but still fighting. On June 26th, with American infantry finally punching through, Walsh and his Seabees moved into the eastern side of Cherbourg. They advanced under fire, house to house, block by block. Walsh refused to lead from the rear. He was out front with his men, kicking in doors and returning fire. In the port district, Walsh's team took fire from a German machine gun nest. They responded with grenades and Tommy guns, eliminating the threat. Despite suffering 25% casualties, they pushed forward. On June 27th, Walsh peeled off a 16-man strike team and charged the sprawling Cherbourg Arsenal, a massive complex of warehouses and bunkers. Armed with demolition charges, rifles, and bazookas, they breached steel doors and cleared room after room in brutal close-quarters combat. Sniper nests, bunkers, and defenders fell one by one. In the chaos, more than 400 stunned German sailors and soldiers surrendered to Walsh's tiny force. But the fight wasn't over. As they secured the arsenal, a newly captured German prisoner, who spoke English and had grown up in the US, told Walsh that 52 American paratroopers were being held in a fortress at the harbor's edge, Fort du Homais. These were 82nd and 101st Airborne troops misdropped on D-Day. They'd been captured and thrown in the dungeon. Now, nearly 350 battle-hardened German troops were entrenched in the stone citadel overlooking the harbor. Walsh had just over a dozen men left, and no margin for error. Storming it would have been suicide, so Walsh came up with a bluff. He pulled a white silk handkerchief from his pocket, a flag of truce, and asked his lieutenant, "Ever play poker?" He and Navy Reserve Lieutenant Frank Lauer walked straight up to the fortress gates under fire and requested to speak with the German commander. They got inside. Up in that second-floor room, Walsh laid it on thick.
Gentlemen, read them and weep. Look at that. 9s and 4s. Full bow, baby.
Cowboys over Queens.
Cold as ice. He told the German officer he was surrounded by 800 insane paratroopers, every one of them foaming at the mouth. "They ain't soldiers anymore," he said. "They're animals, covered in blood, ripping through the city, scalping Germans as we speak. I'm the only thing standing between you and them." Then he leaned in and said, "You surrender to me right now. Maybe I can hold them back. Maybe." Truth was, he had 15 guys tops, a mix of welders, carpenters, and electricians out front, putting on a show with M1s, Tommy guns, and empty bazookas. They were low on ammo, had no heavy weapons, and were bluffing like their lives depended on it, because they did. At 10 a.m. on June 27, 1944, Fort du Homais surrendered, without a shot fired. All 350 German troops laid down their arms. Walsh's men secured the release of 52 dazed but alive American paratroopers. In 2 days, with just 53 men, Walsh's team had captured around 750 Germans, secured the harbor, and rescued fellow Americans, without tanks, artillery, or reinforcements. Cherbourg was now in Allied hands, but it was a wreck. The Germans had sabotaged docks, mined the harbor, and sunk ships to block passage. Even before the last German guns stopped firing, Walsh shifted gears. He set up a naval operations center on the waterfront, gathered intelligence from captured Germans and local French workers, and began organizing salvage. He bypassed red tape, worked directly with minesweepers, and even used wooden sailboats, which couldn't trigger magnetic mines, as improvised sweepers. Thanks to Walsh's leadership, the first supply ships reached Cherbourg within weeks. By August, it was fully functional, just in time to supply Patton's breakout and the Allied push across France. General Eisenhower later credited the port's early opening with fueling the liberation of Europe. For his actions, Commander Quentin R. Walsh was awarded the Navy Cross, the second highest U.S. decoration for valor. His citation highlighted his capture of 2 major strongholds, the surrender of 750 enemy troops, and the rescue of 52 American POWs. With Cherbourg secured, Walsh kept going. In August 1944, he took command of a larger 400-man unit to help liberate the critical ports of Brittany. He later worked alongside Canadian forces to open the port of Le Havre, once again under enemy fire. But by the end of that year, his momentum was cut short. A severe respiratory illness, viral pneumonia worsened by months in the cold, damp English climate, forced him back to the U.S. He medically retired in 1946. In peacetime, Walsh traded his uniform for a quiet life in Maryland, teaching high school science, working as a parole officer, and serving his community without fanfare. During the Korean War, the military called him back for his rare expertise. He passed away in May 2000 at the age of 90, one of the last living legends of D-Day. In 2019, the U.S. Navy announced a new Arleigh Burke-class destroyer would be named after him. The USS Quentin Walsh, DDG-132, the first Navy destroyer ever named for a Coast Guard officer. At the naming ceremony in Cherbourg, U.S. and French officials praised Walsh's actions as one of the most inspiring stories of the Normandy campaign.
Today we remember an extraordinary chapter in our shared history, and it truly is an amazing story.
A Coast Guardsman who led from the front, defied the odds, and secured victory with nothing but grit and a poker face. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Quentin Walsh's story is one of grit, guts, and thinking 2 steps ahead under fire. If it moved you, hit that like button and let us know in the comments. Do you think Quentin Walsh is one of the most underrated heroes of World War II? We want to hear your thoughts. Big thanks to the men and women of the United States Coast Guard, past and present, who keep that legacy alive every day. If you want to support this kind of storytelling, consider subscribing and sharing the video with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, not all heroes wear the uniform you expect. But the real ones never flinch. Links are in the description for sources, book recommendations, and more stories like this one, including the Navy Cross Citation and official Coast Guard history files. Thanks for being part of keeping history alive. Semper Paratus.